Heyo, welcome back to another hardcore episode at the Valley of Spirits podcast. I am your host, Nick, and today we're going to change up the format of our hardcore episode. And the reason why I wanted to do this is I figured that it would be a little better than me just randomly talking about stuff into a microphone. It's still going to be random stuff, but instead of it just being scattered throughout the episode, I'm going to take more of a scripted approach a little bit and introduce you to my flavor of autism, and that is history. Early on it was medieval, and then it turned into World War II during like high school, college time, and it's really turned into Cold War now. So I figured we can talk about random history topics, events, curiosities, and tragedies, have be whatever it is. With that said, though, I already did spend last week digging more into something I already found fascinating, which is they're believed to have been used for espionage. Governments don't acknowledge their existence, but they still operate them, and they use encrypted communications across the world. Today, I figured we'd talk about number stations. Some of you might be asking what a number station is, or why a random guy on YouTube playing World of Warcraft hardcore is talking about it. Trust me, I understand it's a very strange crossover. I just figured it would add more fun to listening or watching these episodes. So we're going to go with it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But a number station is a shortwave radio that provides a tone, tune, or phase shift. Basically, when it goes to transmit, it outputs some generic sound on a standard basis that will hold ownership over specific frequencies. So that way, anybody who's in the field that needs to listen to that station can tune into that one all the time, and they don't have to worry about it shifting across the board. Now, the cool thing about that is they'll use for encrypted communications all over the world. The transmission itself isn't encrypted, it's what is said is encrypted. And we'll get to that later. So what you can do is actually grab yourself a ham radio or go online, tune in, and listen to any one of these active number stations still. They're used for various reasons, not just espionage, but also things like internal military communication. A big one that is known, I think it's still active, is the buzzer. It's a Russian one. It's mainly used for internal communication, but because it buzzes on a specific frequency all the time, it gets misinterpreted as a number station. And the reason why it gets misinterpreted as a number station is because its operational usage isn't the same as a standard number station. So a number station doesn't technically get used for espionage or other things, whereas the buzzer that everybody knows is used for internal military operation communication inside Russia. So it's a different use of the same technique, if that makes sense, which is why it doesn't qualify. Let's shift into the history of number stations. According to the Conet Project, which is a 5-disc set of recordings of number stations by the Iredal discs beginning in 1997, which I did look up how much a set of these would be, thinking that maybe it's like, $100, $200, a little bit of a collector's item because it's a niche topic and it was done in the 90s. No, they are $5,000 to $10,000, and there's only 2 left that they're selling. And back in the day, apparently, whenever they started selling them, there's like 3 or 4 of them that are worth $100, which I wish I would have picked them up then. Not that I'm picking up, 5 or 10 grand for CDs. But you can also find the same on YouTube as well and listen to it there. And that just goes through a lot of different other number stations that have had recordings done. And it's actually really interesting stuff. Yeah, so there's only 2 copies, apparently, 2 physical copies left that they have. So if you want to go spend 5-10 grand, be my guest. Buy them, listen to them, or go to YouTube, listen to it for free. But number stations have been around since World War I. Austria had used one that used Morse code and would do the same thing that a number station does today. Would just transmit a message, didn't have the preamble and ending and all that stuff, just do it Morse code. They'd decode it and away they go. Now, it did get more widely used during the Cold War. A lot of them started popping up around the 50s to 70s time frame. And a lot of developed countries started using them as well. All various types of countries, some not existing anymore because they suck and capitalism is king. But during the Cold War, the use of number stations didn't stop after the fall of the USSR either. They continue to be used today, although a limited number. There's numerous ones that have lasted to 2008, 2009, and they did start during the Cold War in the 70s. Some of these have also been in the center of multiple espionage court cases, a few in the U.S. If you've heard about the Illegals program, which was a set of unofficial undercover sleeper agents that had infiltrated into the United States, and it was conducted through found through an investigation by the FBI, an arrest of 10 agents on June 27, 2010, and then they were swapped on July 9th, 2010 through a prisoner exchange. They were actually planted by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service inside the United States, most of them using false identities, posing as ordinary Americans, and then they tried to build contacts with academics, industrialists, policymakers, and all this stuff. But there's a lot of interesting cases that have gone into it. The Illegals program is, I think, the newest one that has happened. The last one that we had, that was a big one, was dealing with Cuba down in Miami. And that was, I think there was 5 Cuban intelligence officers that were captured, and they were communicating with Atención, which is their Cuba's number station that we continue to have some issues with as well. But before we start getting into active number stations and court cases and stuff, I want to go over the transmission format, or like the standard format, even though that there's many differences between a lot of stations, their operators, and how they output their the message chunk of the transmission. So when they're sent, they usually begin on the hour or the half hour, and they'll repeat sometimes too. They start with a prelude, then there's the message, and they end with their sign-off. For instance, the prelude is going to be some electronic sound or music. The message will be then a set of numbers or number groupings with spaces in between. This is where the encryption comes in, and it's not that the transmission is encrypted, it's that the message is. Because the listener has to have some sort of way to decode the numbers, and they use what's called an OTP or one-time pad. And this pad is a piece of paper. It can be any size. Some we're using like gum wrappers and stuff, something that's like either edible, throwable, or burnable, something where it can be destroyed or gotten rid of really easy. And what they'll do is it'll have a shift between the numbers in the alphabet or words or however the OTP is set up. And the listener will be able to then listen to it, decode it, and then be good. Later on, they stopped using OTP, like a piece of paper, and it shifted to, during the Miami bust for Atención, it was actually going through laptops, and it was like 3 years of investigation, and the FBI had decoded some of it because they were able to break into the apartment where the 5 spies lived and get into their laptops and figure out the decoder for it. With all that said, let's actually dive into some more of the well-known stations. I do have audio bits from the stations that I'm going to talk about them, give you a little bit of history about the station, and then give you some of the audio clippings that you guys can get a feel for what it is. So all these audios come from the Cornet Project, which the YouTube version, obviously, because we don't have the $5,000 for CDs. We're new, so I'm not going to blow money like that. But you can go look it up on the Cornet Project on YouTube. It's Cornet, C-O-N-E-T Project. If you search it up, you should be able to find it easy as pie. So let's get into some of the more well-known number stations, whether they're deactivated or active still. So we're going to start with the Lincolnshire Poacher. Believed to have been operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service, or MI6, and maintained by the Royal Air Force, its total active time ranged from the mid-1970s until 2008. It specifically broadcast from the HM Government Communications Centre near Gawcott in Buckinghamshire, England. Sorry if I mispronounced any of that. I'm not, nor have I been to the UK ever. Later, it was found to be coming from Cyprus, where it was found attached to the Royal Air Force. It's how we ended up finding out that it actually was maintained by the Royal Air Force, but supposedly operated by MI6. The Lincolnshire Project would play the tune of the same name prior to the transmission, and then after playing the tune for a bit, an English accented female would come on the air and speak a series of 5-digit numbers. It operated on the 6 and 16 megahertz shortwave frequency. It also is thought that the Lincolnshire Poacher had a sister station called Cherry Ripe. It would transmit in the same format, so it would do a song called Cherry Ripe and then use a female voice as well for a series of numbers. It was thought that these two stations would operate in a way that they could talk to everybody, spies across the globe. And we had Lincolnshire Poacher would deal with, Middle East, Europe area, and then Cherry Ripe would deal with Asia mainly. So here's a snippet of what the Lincolnshire Poacher sounded like during its active time.
39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 39715. 66475. 66475. 19274. 19274. 92028. 92028.
So that's the Lincolnshire Poacher. I did cut it up a little bit, so that's why we have a rough intro and exit on that. I didn't want to play the full 4 minutes of it and just bore the hell out of you with it, because these can get a little boring and annoying. The next station I want to talk about, though, is the Swedish Rhapsody. It was a Polish number station operated by the Ministry of Public Security that used AM broadcasting. Swedish Rhapsody was operated between the late 1950s and 1998. The main focus of this number station was to send coded messages to agents located in the Western Bloc, which, if you don't know what that is, look up how Berlin was split up during the Cold War, it'll make sense. What makes this station so special is not its use in Berlin, but rather the use of the Sprachmorse generator, which was an invention by the East German State Security Services. This machine was used to broadcast. When listening to it, it sounds like a young girl, or a young German girl speaking. It was done by tweaking the audio of the machine to create a different tone. Most stations that the USSR did, or some of them, did use this. We'll talk about another one later that used it as well. The station's broadcast would start by the voice shouting Achtung, or attention in German, followed by numbers and sets of fives, obviously spoken in German because that's what the machine does. After the fall of communism, though, the station went silent, but was quickly brought back online and thought to have been operated until 2007 by NATO. And now we're going to go and listen to a snippet of the Swedish Rhapsody. So that was a Swedish Rhapsody. You can kind of hear the octune in it. It's very muffled a bit in the start of the message portion. But let's move on to the next station that we have to listen to today, and that's called the Gong. The Gong was operated by the East German Army, and it gets its name from the intro music it played, kind of like most of these do, which was a set of gongs and chimes before each broadcast. The intro tune was set on a tape, and over time, due to the age of the tape, which was probably never replaced because, USSR, and what happened is it distorted over time. The tape kind of got lengthened and shifted a little bit because it's a physical item. And so, because it got distorted so much, it became more eerie as it went on. And so by the time it ended, it was like the most eerie sound of a radio tune-in you could ever get. But the station started operating in 1970s and stopped just before the unification of Germany in the 1990s. It's the same, uses the same machine as the Swedish Rhapsody and followed the same exact format except for the preamble, which used the gongs instead of what Swedish Rhapsody used. Its last transmission actually is still a mystery. It started with a live male announcer stating something in German and a fellow soldier's probably drunk, singing a children's song called All My Ducklings. And I'll play both snippets for you, and I'll put a break in it so that way you know which one we're listening to. The first one's going to be a standard broadcast from that station, and then the second one's going to be that last transmission I talked about that was still a mystery. It was probably just people screwing around, honestly, when they knew they were shutting the station down. But anyway, here is the Gong. So that was the standard transmission that you would hear. I cut it off a little bit in there, but you could also hear the distortion before the first octune. It's just really cool. I love this stuff. I have no idea why. But anyway, here is the last transmission from the Gong station. So that was the Gong station and its last transmission, which, as you can see, is strange. But like I said, I think it's just a bunch of people going like, "Hey, we're done with this, and Germany's getting unified. Deuces, let's have some beer and screw with stuff." Tends to be the military thing to do. Anyway, the last station I have for you today is called the Czech Lady, originally called Bulgarian Betty, but this was changed when the station's actual location was better understood. It operated from the late 1970s until its final message on January 1st, 1991. It was run by the Czechoslovakian military intelligence. They did not automate their messages like most did, and instead actually read them live for each broadcast. It's believed that Czech spy Erwin van Harlem, which is actually his undercover ID name. You have to look it up. I have no idea how to say it in Czech. I'm not going to try to pronounce his Czech name. Had received instructions from the station as well. The site had multiple variants too, and has caused some issues when it comes to the identification of the actual Czech Lady when it comes to recordings, just because there's so many stations and so many variations of that same style. But here is what I found is supposed to be considered S10D, which is the Czech Lady. So that was the Czech Lady. Again, all of these have had their own various history on it, and I really didn't go into too much detail on each one. But you can always Google them, look them up for yourself, and kind of dive into it as well if you're really interested. I thought it was something different to do instead of just rambling on about various things and while playing hardcore. So if you enjoyed it, please give a like, a follow, comment down below if you want to see some more of it. I'm more than happy to keep doing research, whether it's Cold War stuff or any chunk of history. If there's something you guys want me to do a deep dive into and do a 30-minute to an hour episode and dig in on it, I'll go for it. Like, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll dig into it. I am also going to give you a little snippet of, if you remember from the start of the episode, I had talked about Skyking messages. I'll give you a snippet of what that is from the U.S. Air Force. They are emergency action messages. So the number of times Skyking is set at the start will denote the priority of the message. 2, which the one I have going in, is actually just for a test kind of thing. So, but it's really cool to be able to hear it and no, hey, we kind of do it too. All right. Well, I will see you guys later. Here's the Skyking message. Have a great, wonderful day.
Skyking, do not answer. Mike, Bravo, 5, time, 3-8, authentication, uniform, golf. I say again. Skyking, do not answer. Mike, Bravo, 5, time, 3-8, authentication, uniform, golf. This is main cell, out.
That's still recharging. ability isn't ready yet. That spell isn't ready yet. That's still recharging.
What can I do for you? Go with honor, friend. Be careful. Go with honor, friend. Light bless you.
You need something? Farewell. Light bless you. Greetings. Be careful.
King's honor, friend, for the Alliance. Go with honor, friend, for the Alliance. Light bless you.